The Walking Dead is one of the biggest television franchises of all time, and it's easy to see why. This show's pretty much got it all: beloved characters, tense storylines, and brutal action. The fans just can't get enough, but it looks like AMC is biting off more than it can chew. They just wrapped up Tales of the Walking Dead, and the show was a bad sign for upcoming spin-offs. Here's what you need to know. First up, this franchise is experiencing some growing pains. It's taken a while to get here, but The Walking Dead is pretty much a phenomenon now. No one had any idea how massive the show was going to be back when it premiered in October of 2010. Needless to say, Rick Grimes and his crew have come a long way since then, and AMC's got big plans for the future. Season 11 is going to put the mainline series to bed in November, and we can't wait to see how the story wraps up. That said, don't expect the franchise to go away anytime soon. That's because the folks in charge of the whole shebang are going all out with the spin-offs. Don't get us wrong, the series is no stranger to sequel shows. Fear the Walking Dead has been running for 7 years, and Season 8 is currently in production, while The Walking Dead World Beyond wrapped up in December of last year. That's not to mention online specials like Dead in the Water and Flight 462. And now that the mainline show is about to come to a close, AMC's ramping up production on 3 other projects in the same universe. Now sure, that's pretty exciting, but we've got a bad feeling about some of these new titles. Why? Well, AMC's latest show left us a little worried about where the studio is taking this franchise. They obviously want to milk the property for all it's worth, but Tales of the Walking Dead honestly felt like a bit of a breaking point for the series. The show was fun for sure, but it also had some massive flaws. And get this, some of those flaws feel like they'll carry over to the other projects in the pipeline. AMC wants to expand the show into a whole universe, but they might just have to go back to the drawing board. Let's look at why that's the case. In theory, a Walking Dead cinematic universe sounds awesome, and we're pretty sure millions of people would tune in for that kind of content. That said, it honestly feels like AMC is scraping the bottom of the barrel for their zombie narratives these days. The studio has to be careful about oversaturation, since that's one of the biggest mistakes you can make when setting up a cinematic universe. Churning out too much content is just as bad as releasing too little, and you can really see that struggle come to life in Tales. We don't know about you, but we were really excited when AMC first announced the show. An anthology series set in the Walking Dead verse sounded like an awesome time, and the reveal of the cast just got us even more hyped. It felt like fans were finally going to get a version of The Walking Dead that steps away from the formula of the franchise. Making each episode a new story with fresh characters felt like a great way to introduce stakes to proceedings. As it turns out though, Tales has a lot of the same problems as its sister shows. If you've seen any of the 6 episodes in Season 1, you'll know that the anthology show feels exactly like The Walking Dead. That was a major letdown for the fans, who were hoping that the series would breathe some life into the formula. It's honestly impressive how the franchise has kept itself relevant after 12 years on the air, but Tales felt like a good opportunity to break away from the established style of the series. Unfortunately, one of the show's biggest problems is a lack of variety. What's more, it barely feels like a new direction for the franchise, and a big part of that is how boring all the settings are. At this point, zombified forests and desecrated buildings are part of the series' MO, and Tales of the Walking Dead did very little to change that. There are tons of forests and empty buildings across all of its episodes, and even its more out-there settings feel kind of tired. That's because stuff like the bunker in Episode 1 and the boat community in Episode 3 are just rehashes of locations we've already seen in Fear the Walking Dead. On top of that, the anthology show limits itself to locations in eastern and central USA, which honestly feels like a major missed opportunity. Taking things to new places would have done a lot to make the stories feel fresh, but as it is, they just feel kind of samey. Now, that doesn't mean the stories can't land. It's totally possible for a show to be set in the same place but feature a brand new story that brings it to life in a new way. Unfortunately, Tales has been pretty lazy on that front too. Instead of trying out new things in the anthology format, the writers behind the scenes decided to stick to a few different templates for each episode. For example, episodes 2, 5, and 6 all have unreliable narrators that force the audience to question the events of the story. Now, we're not against using old tools to make a story land, but relying on the same format for multiple episodes feels kind of lame. The writers could have been really creative with each entry in the first season, but they decided to play it safe. That's a huge bummer if you ask us. Following up on that, Tales of the Walking Dead isn't even careful with the continuity. What do we mean by that? Well, some of the things that happen in the show feel like they come out of left field for the franchise as a whole. Stuff like the paranormal activity in Episode 6 and the time loop in Episode 2 make no sense within the established rules of the franchise. You basically have to assume that the characters were hallucinating the whole time, and that's a pretty cheap trick to play on the audience. Unfortunately, those aren't even the biggest continuity issues in the anthology. Those pop up in episode 3 and episode 4. The former star, Samantha Morton's Alpha, goes over how she joined the Whisperers. We're not going to spoil anything if you haven't seen the show, but that short synopsis probably left you scratching your head. If you think back to Alpha's first appearance in season 10, it was heavily implied that she was the one who founded the Whisperers after meeting Beta. Tales of the Walking Dead basically wipes out that backstory, which is a pretty confusing decision on the writer's part. What's even more confusing, though, is what goes down in episode 4. That one is set 35 years into the zombie apocalypse, which is further along than we've seen in the mainline series. Instead of fleshing out the future of the franchise and showing fans how civilization has developed decades after the outbreak, Tales pulls all its punches. The story doesn't do anything interesting with the time period. It could honestly have been set back in the timeline, and the story would have been basically the same. We know that's really disappointing. Now, to talk about what this all means for the other spin-offs in the pipeline. All these issues reflect really badly on AMC's commitment to the other shows they've got in development. Those include an untitled show about Daryl's solo adventures in Europe, a miniseries that'll wrap up Rick and Michonne's story, and The Walking Dead: Dead City. The last one's a spin-off starring Jeffrey Dean Morgan's Negan and Lauren Cohen as Maggie. We know. All those shows sound really good, but don't get excited just yet. The problems in Tales might just carry over to the new content. For starters, we're worried that the writers are going to change the established continuity whenever they feel like it. That's what they did with Alpha's backstory, so it's not a stretch to assume they'll shift things around whenever it's convenient for them. Honestly, if you can have time loops in The Walking Dead, basically anything can happen to the characters. Seeing as how the 3 new projects all feature older characters, let's hope the writers stay true to what made them likable in the first place. We just hope the teams working on the new titles aren't afraid to take risks. It would be a genuine letdown if something like Dead City failed to properly explore its setting, but that's exactly what multiple episodes in Tales did. At the end of the day, making a cinematic universe out of a zombie show might not be the best idea. The genre just doesn't have that kind of range, and we saw that firsthand with the anthology show. Only time will tell if AMC can find some new ground to cover, and we'll be really hyped if they do. That's a wrap for this video. What did you think of Tales of the Walking Dead? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.